So I just wanted to cover the life of Tim Drake, and this is mostly following canon, but some of these may not exactly fall in the current timeline, so I just wanted to cover his character from the main events that I know. So starting off, we know that Tim Drake is the third Robin behind Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, and starting at a young age, around 5 years old, is where Tim witnesses the death of Dick Grayson's parents. He was at that circus, and in terms of his family, he was born to a pretty rough household. We have a few different versions of his parents, but usually from a young age, we find his mother often being terminally ill, and his father being a former criminal, and also his father trying to do whatever he can to find the cure for his mom. Whereas you really have Tim Drake outside of this, who is just really focused on Batman, especially given that horrific scene he witnessed with the Flying Graysons. So around this age, he really starts to study Batman and looks for his identity. Continues this on in his early childhood. When he turns about 9 years old, he sees some footage of both Batman and Robin on patrol at night, and really is able to determine both of their identities. Given he went to the circus when he was younger, he really pinpoints Dick Grayson's characteristics, specifically his somersaults and his other movements. Really, he pinpoints those back to Dick, as he's probably the only one that fits that description that would be able to do those moves. And that's where he's able to tie Dick Grayson to Bruce Wayne being Batman, since Bruce Wayne did formally adopt Dick Grayson. So he figures this out there, and he eventually follows this and learns that Dick Grayson is no longer Robin. He also follows this with Jason Todd. So he realizes that there isn't a Robin anymore. And this is really what inspires him when Batman is in a bit of trouble himself. Kind of interjects himself as Robin. Even gets Alfred's help because he knew that something had happened to Batman and he was kidnapped with Scarecrow. So he just immediately dons the suit of Robin and does the best to help out with Batman. So after he pretty much just throws himself in there as Robin and in the Batcave and pretty much says he knows exactly what's going on and is able to use his intelligence to help Batman out of a jam, Batman, or Bruce, officially accepts him for the new role of Robin and sends him overseas to start his training, similar to the journey that Bruce went on before becoming Batman, as well as both Dick and Jason, and then returns after about 6 months to a year to start serving as Robin. And then going into age 15, that's where Bane breaks Batman's back and really puts him out of commission. And that's where we know that Jean-Paul Valley becomes his first replacement. So Tim Drake at this point would serve as Robin to Jean-Paul Valley or Azrael's Batman, and this really doesn't go too hot. You have Jean-Paul Valley kind of falling off the rails and losing it a little bit and not really following a lot of the proper protocols of donning the mantle of Batman. So at one point he even locks Tim Drake out of the Batcave and out of his operations. Tim is really just forced to go off on his own. That's where you get a few instances of him joining the Young Justice. And then just following this, you have Jean-Paul Valley losing the mantle of Batman, and then you have Dick taking over for a little bit. So Tim Drake would come back and return as Robin under Dick Grayson's Batman. And then around this time too, you also have him helping Bruce get back on his feet, helping him with his rehab and his recovery. So that would be between about 16 to 18 years old. And then just following this, you have Bruce eventually getting back to his normal self. This is also where Tim just leaves periodically and starts leading the new Teen Titans, but still has a pretty good relationship with Bruce. Even becomes his legal son eventually. And then also during his time as Robin at about 18 and 19, you have Jason Todd coming back as the Red Hood and confronting Tim Drake being the new Robin, because he was really upset that Bruce just found an immediate replacement after what happened to him in the Joker. So Jason really takes it out on Tim Drake. And then you have later Tim Drake getting the best of him, even though he does have help, to really stop Jason Todd's actions as Red Hood. And then I'd say the more pivotal role you have for Tim at this time is when he turns about 19 or 20 years old. That's where you have Bruce Wayne going missing. Tim Drake is really the only one that looks for him. You have a lot of people assuming that something happened to him. Tim was one of the main people that really believed that he was just missing, and due to his really good detective skills, you have him even leaving Gotham to go on a long search for Bruce Wayne, and he really is eventually able to get a few different clues and kind of hone in on the reason of Bruce Wayne's disappearance. So that's really where he leads the operation to help bring him out of that. So he's really able to help lead the search in bringing him back. And during Bruce Wayne's disappearance as Batman, you have him eventually leaving as Robin and just doing this independently, and even taking up the role of Red Robin. So that would be when he goes on that search for Batman. And really, we just know that after this, he continued serving as Red Robin on his own, still would go back from time to time to reconcile with Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson and all of the Bat family. So he still had a good relationship there and would help out when he wanted to, but really just would live on his own as Red Robin. And we know he likely continued this into his 30s and 40s, and just at some point eventually gave it up, because we later see him in Batman Beyond as an engineer, and we don't really have too much of an insight as to when he transferred into this role. I'd say it's probably somewhere in his 30s and 40s. He wanted to give up his crime-fighting identity and get a job and really put his technological skills and his intelligence to work as an engineer. And I'd say in Batman Beyond, he's probably in his 60s, just given he's about anywhere from 15 to 20 years younger than Bruce. And we know that in this plot, we have in the original animated series, you have Tim Drake also getting captured by the Joker at an extremely young age, like Jason Todd. This really comes back to bite him when the Joker also plants a chip in his brain at this time. We know that Tim Drake was resilient and was able to eventually escape, and we know that he's able to return as Robin during this time. So following this storyline, we have Tim Drake being the one to return as the Joker in the Batman Beyond movie, and basically a little bit more of a science fiction element here. You have the Joker taking over Tim Drake's mind with this chip, so he's able to pretty much be conscious in Tim Drake's body, and he's not able to really be aware of it. And that's where we eventually get that big fight with him and Terry McGinnis at the end of the movie, and Terry is eventually able to get the best of him as the Joker, or working as the Joker through his consciousness, and then McGinnis as Batman Beyond is able to fry the chip in his head. And we also know that through this event, it really is what rekindles his relationship with Bruce Wayne in the end. So I think that's a little bit of a good happy ending and a full circle moment for their previous relationship. And we really don't have too much on Tim Drake besides that. We likely assume that he continued his career as an engineer after this and continued to be a family man, and didn't really take any other part in Bruce Wayne's operations with Terry McGinnis and Batman Beyond. And then just a few other instances in other media. We have the two big recent examples with both Gotham Knights and the Arkham Knight, or the Arkham Knight series. And I'd say, just given the timeline, you have Tim Drake in the Gotham Knights version being about 16 years old, or really being the youngest of the Bat family in that case. And then in Arkham Knight, you have him in his early 20s as he's brought along as the next Robin, following Jason Todd and Dick Grayson. So we see him at pretty different points there. And I'd say just in terms of Tim Drake's character, Tim Drake is the more intelligent of the three, and his real talent is those detective skills. We see that at a young age with him figuring out who Batman and Robin is, and through that he's really able to jumpstart his career as Robin and get his foot in the door. You do have, in terms of other Bat family members, Barbara Gordon, who's also really smart. I would say Barbara Gordon takes it in terms of just pure intelligence and IQ, but really Tim Drake's bread and butter is those investigative and detective skills, and I think that really speaks a lot to the original role of Batman himself. And in terms of future projects, I really don't think there's a whole lot you could do. I think just getting a Robin to start with would be a good progression, but I don't really think you're going to go through 2 or 3 Robins in any sort of trilogy, whether that's with Robert Pattinson or even the new Batman under James Gunn. I don't think we're going to quite get there, even though I do think Tim Drake's character has some pretty interesting abilities. So I'd say the best bet is to have maybe like a spin-off project where you follow the Bat family storyline. I think that would be an excellent option to introduce Tim Drake. So let me know if you guys have any ideas on how you could include Tim Drake as Robin in a Batman project, or if you just have any thoughts on his character overall. Really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you later.